never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Welcome to another episode of the NRL Allstars podcast. Barnesy here, your host of the NRL Allstars podcast. Here for another team preview. We're almost through all of them, have about 3 or 4 to go after this one. For this one, we are doing the North Queensland Cowboys. And of course, like we have for the last few years, even more than that, I have Andrew Scanlan, aka Cowboy himself, from the old Points Per Minute podcast returning to help me out. So Andrew, thanks for jumping back on, mate.
Cheers, Barnesy. Thanks for having me on, mate.
And I know that I will get some fan mail for you from this because despite not running the Points Per Minute podcast for maybe, 3 seasons, there is still people that say, oh, it's great to see Cowboy back. I hope that Points Per Minute will come back. I say it every year, Points Per Minute is gone because life's just got a bit too busy for you, but there still is fans there, mate. There still is fans.
Oh, so good. I've got a couple of mates who want me to get back on the horse as well, mate. So, yeah, I've ruled it out for now, but never say never, right?
Yeah, never say never. Legends never die, as they say. Now, Cowboys is what we're going to be talking about. For anyone that hasn't done so or is listening or watching for the first time, make sure you do jump on YouTube, Spotify or iTunes, however you prefer to consume your podcast content, because on there you can subscribe and make sure you get all the episodes at once. It is going to be the biggest week that we've had because we're going to have 5 team previews drop this week because we run out of time a little bit, but they're all going to get up there, so look out for them. But Andrew, your Cowboys. Now, interesting because from a SuperCoach point of view, I think there's a lot of interest. And it often doesn't translate necessarily to the on-field performance or success. So I think that's one of the key things with the Cows for me. They could run badly on the table, but still be quite a uniquely relevant SuperCoach side with some of their high performers and their attack. And I'm kind of seeing that again this year. When I'm having a look at it, I'm seeing a lot of guys that I like, but I'm not necessarily thinking that they're going to be contenders this year. So we're going to go through their roster changes first of all in a minute. But I mean, my general feeling is love them for SuperCoach. I'm not too sure about how they'll go for the actual season though.
Yeah, I think we've seen this story before where they've got an okay draw to start with, and they might find themselves around that mid part of the top 8 throughout the start of the season, solely for the fact they've got a good opening draw. And then post-Origin, when the draw's a little bit harder, I think they'll fall down a little bit, unfortunately. But I don't think there's any reason to believe otherwise. I think we're gonna see another 12th to 14th, maybe 15th season. But you know what? I'm quite negative when it comes to the Cowboys. Some would say a realist, but when a team's leaking that many points, then it's kind of hard to see them make the top 8.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, I'll say that my range for them might be even a bit better than you. I think they could go sort of 10th to 16th. So I'll bump them up to 10th. All right. So they
very
could,
generous of you, yeah.
They could make a year by finishing 10th, since you don't think they'll get that high. But yeah, pretty similar type of range. I actually think that there's 2 coaches that I think are under a lot of pressure among maybe a couple of others, but these 2 I actually think will lose their jobs this year. And I don't, wish that upon anyone. So hopefully for both these blokes, they keep their jobs. But I can see Todd Payten and Seabold getting their walking orders at some point, whether that's at the end of the year or during the year. I see a lot of similarities actually between Manly and the Cowboys, and we haven't done the Manly podcast yet, but we will be. And, the similarities are really that the forward packs are quite light on. Obviously, guys like McLean for the Cowboys were meant to be the front rower that was meant to lead the pack as the alpha middle. Never happened, never materialised. And you've been missing that forever since Taumalolo took a tumble in form a few years back. There just hasn't been any real decent big front rowers for you or big middles. And that's been an issue. And then obviously, even the back row, you've got sporadic form there with guys like Nanai that can be a superstar, but the consistency in both of those back row spots hasn't really been there. And, I think that the backs have been good, but the spine, it's always been a little bit the Drinky show, and then last year I thought Dearden probably had a career year. But if it's just the two of those guys, they're just that one half short again. And between the pack and that, I feel like they struggle. And then you look at the defensive side of it. And again, like I see the same thing with Manly. Like the halves and, brilliant fullback, but the halves, both of them, are they both up to standard together? Is the pack up to standard? Defensively, they might score some points, but defensively, can they stand up? And all those things are just such big question marks.
Yeah, I don't think the Cowboys forward pack's been the same since the Matty Scott, Gavin Cooper days, to be honest. They haven't even had a voice, to be honest. And I know we'll speak about Reid Marnie later in the pod, but I was his biggest hater, but I think he's actually going to bring one big thing the Cowboys have been missing over the past few seasons, and that's someone in the forward pack with a voice, someone who's not afraid to make them accountable. And I've never seen that, gosh, in I don't know how many years. And I totally agree, mate. Like their forward pack isn't really that great, both on the field and from a SuperCoach perspective. But you know what? Like there's no reason to believe that their defense will change this year. Some may argue that Reid Marnie will bring something to the team, and how much can one significant change to a roster really bring a Cowboys side? So the realists of us will say that, yeah, they'll finish just outside of the 8 and they'll leak a hell of a lot of points. But luckily, from a SuperCoach perspective, leaking points isn't a major factor. And the fact that they're a really strong attacking side who can put on the points, that's what we're here to talk about.
Well, yeah, that's right. And that's what really does make them appealing to me, all of those points that they can put on, even when they are losing games. And when you're looking at the roster, Matthew Lodge has come in, and obviously that goes hand in hand with the fact that they've been searching for props for a long time, but they haven't been able to spend on any, obviously blue sky, getting a Kalamatangi in or something would have been ideal. Payne Haas, for some reason, could have just chosen just to go up north a little bit. That would have been amazing. But, you end up with Matt Lodge. And look, he could do a job that would help improve them. And Reid Marnie's obviously the big one. But, Reid Marnie, is a bit of a reclamation project at this point. Maybe he does recapture his form, but I don't think he'll be as good as Robson anyway. So brings us to the losses. And when you're losing someone like Robson, it's not really a like-for-like swap for me. So I'd actually say they're worse off at the moment than what they were last year, because they've also got some of those guys that are a little bit older, like the Taumalolos, for example. So roster-wise, you haven't really done much at all. When it comes to the draw, though, and this is the most interesting thing, right? The Cowboys draw, I'm going to say, is absolutely mint to start with. So obviously in SuperCoach, like we always talk about on these team previews, the first month is really important. And look, Cowboy, the first month for them is pretty amazing. And I'm just drinking up here just to have a look at the draw with him next to it, because it makes me salivate. They start off with Newcastle. It is away, Tigers away, and then they have the Titans at home. They do have the Storm in week 4, but that is at home. And then even when you look at the next 4 weeks, the Dragons, the Broncos, the Manly Seagulls, who I said I think will really struggle this year, and also the Sharkies, who they've actually got a good record of putting points on, and quite a good rivalry. So you look at it and go, wow, that's actually a pretty good 8 weeks. But the first 3 weeks, I would rate it as number 1 against any other team. I think the first 3 weeks, where you can play the Knights, the Tigers, and the Titans 3 in a row, that's 3 sides that were near the bottom of last year's 8. They might improve, but they're still a ways off being some of those better sides that you want to avoid playing for SuperCoach. Those are 3 really good weeks. And you also look at it and go, well, round 12 is the big buy round. They play Souths then, who could be missing some players as well. And that's a good cover for anyone that you start with. So draw-wise, I rate the first 3 weeks better than anybody's.
The draw is beautiful, yeah, and more of a reason to, Drinkwater, for example, you can't really avoid that guy for your SuperCoach team. You'd be missing out big time. He's a guy that he doesn't just need the draw, but he can put on the points against the harder teams like Melbourne and Penrith. So great look for Purdue, Drinkwater, taking the risk on people like Did, and maybe even Tuolungi, people like that. The draw is beautiful. It'll set them up so nicely for the season. And I would love to see a change in what they've done previously. Maybe just hold that position on the ladder. Even drop just 2 or 3 positions would be great. Not 10, not 8. Just try to, finish the season off well. They really do struggle, don't they, mate? Like as soon as that origin period's done, they're toast. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what causes it. Surely it's not fatigue. They've typically had quite a few Origin players in the past 5 years. I get that, but so have other teams that can maintain a solid end of season run. So what can we take from the easy draw at the start of the season? Maybe you take a risk on those center wing halves pods, perhaps. But then again, as with any Cowboys player in the back line, it's just such a high risk. But we'll get to those players later anyway, mate.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think now's maybe as good a time as any. Let's talk about them. Let's get straight into the players, mate. So, first of all, we mentioned Scotty Drinkwater, and he's the number one player. So we're going to start off with the guns. And on the gun side of things, I have to say, Drinky was one of the first expensive guys I put in my side, and he left my side for a little while. But then I found a way to get him back because the more I looked at the draw and his numbers, the more I just had to have a piece of it. And if you think that the Cowboys are going to go well, Drinkwater's the number one player. 793,400. It's an expensive price, but again, I always say if you're going to pay for elite points, then really it doesn't matter, and it is elite points in what he's going to give you. I was really encouraged by the numbers that I saw from him last year when I was going through it for this, and also when I initially looked at him. He averaged 81 points per game, which was actually up on his 79 points per game in 2024. But he's been really consistent between that 79 to 83 range for 3 years in a row now as one of those elite guys. And when you have a look at it, rounds 1 to 9 last year, 85 points per game. So you're looking at a nice increase there to start the season. And he had 7 tons for the season. So almost a third of his games were tonning up. 60 plus, he went 75% of the time. So it's an amazing consistency when you actually have a look at his numbers. And I think that people have a narrative about Drinky that he's got these real low ones in him. And it's true that he has in the past, but he has lesser than what I think people think. And when you look at that consistency, look at his try scoring. 4 straight years, he's been 10 to 11 tries, 4 years in a row. And you look at the games played, mate, if you want someone that's not going to go down, 24 games, 24 games, 21 games, 20 games, 24 games. He does not miss games. And that is so important. I think that the devil's advocate side of it, Cowboy, when I look at the bad numbers, is his base has dropped about 10% year on year for about 3 years. Having a 20 raw base last year is poor, and he does have a high reliance on attack because he's one of the top creating points SuperCoach plays in the game. 29 create points per game last year. But in saying that, it's almost like with someone like him, you just put the attacking stats as part of his base because he gets it every single game. And you look at that draw and you go, well, how can't he do well? And then you look at what he did last year to sides like the Titans, 132 points and 154 points each of his games against the Titans. You see that and you just go, wow, I have to have him versus the Titans. And then you go, well, what did he do against Newcastle? 51 versus Newcastle Knights last year. What about the Tigers? Well, he had a poor game of 71, backed it up with another ton of 106. So, 4 out of his 5 games last year against the 3 opposition he's going to start with were tons. I looked at it and went, look, even if I just got him for 3 weeks, there's no way I can't have him.
And you got to ask yourself the question, do you really want to risk not having him in your side, even at that price tag with that, kind of low base? I wouldn't want to be missing out on any of those massive scores. One thing we should note too is in the preseason game against Penrith. Look, I know they were playing a C, D, E grade side, but I mean they were throwing the ball around, trying offensive plays and set plays, and he was in everything. And when you got a Cowboy side that piles on the points, which they do, I mean they finished either first or second last year in attacking side, but he's in everything. So I mean, with that draw combined with his involvement, how on earth could you just say no to him? Well, he's in my side. I've got the VC on him straight off the bat. I wouldn't have a problem putting the C on him if he wasn't the first one playing. But yeah, that's the only question you got to ask yourself. Do you really want to risk missing out on all those points? He's such a weapon, and he'll be in your side for a massive part, if not all, of the season.
Yeah, and he won't play Origin, so he'll be. Well, I say unlikely. He deserves it. There's just too many guys ahead of him at the moment. But yeah, he plays that round 12, and it's a trade that you don't need to make at that point. And he has been, he could get towards the $1 million type of mark on the right run. So he might be expensive later on. Depends on when you buy him. I'm just going to finish off by saying the start of their last draw for last season wasn't that easy. They had Manly away, Sharks, Broncos away, Canberra, Penrith, South, a bit easier for South. But he went between, all of those games were 60 plus, with 4 out of the 6 in 70 plus. And everyone was like, Drinky's only averaging about 70 points, 68 points. He's a bit unders. He's not going very well. He was consistent as a rock. And then all of a sudden he goes into the next 3 games after a bye and he goes 132, 127, 117. 3 in a row, tons. And those are the runs that he can go on when he's hot. He did have a 14 against Manly. So, there is some truth to those really low scores. I think the thing is that he only had 3 out of those 24 games last year that were really low at sub 40. So, they are there, but, you take that when you can get all those other elite scoring stats. Murray Taulagi had a career year as well. And Taulagi is an old favourite of mine. I always love getting him in when he's at a cheap price, particularly for a run. But he's never been, I guess, consistently high enough in SuperCoach Cowboy for him to be a real gun and one that you could sort of rely on. And that changed last year a little bit. He only had 15 games, so that's the important part. He was injured, and he has been the last couple of years. 66 points per game is easily his best season. The season before he was 62, and he hasn't actually had a 60-plus season before that. That gives me pause for positivity, though, to think that he's come into his own in the last 2 years. I think he's a 60-plus player, and I still think that 66 he could grow. I guess when I'm having a look at it, you could take this either way. He did have a career year and he had a crazy strike rate of 12 tries in 15 games. Some people might say, even for a good try scorer like him, it's unsustainable. Maybe he's a little bit over. It does include 2 lower minute games, but I like that his base power is a 41 as a floor. It's a decent floor for someone who's on the wing. I guess the other thing that I'm not real sure on is he doesn't ton up a lot. And he's only actually got 3 sides that he's actually put a ton on. So it's not great for his ton ability. But when you look at the 3 sides, 2 of the 3 that he has tonned up with, including a career high 145, which was against the Newcastle Knights, and a 140 versus the West Tigers, are in his first 3 weeks. I actually look at him and go, he's super expensive, but no one's going to get on him. And I could easily see him average 80 across that first 3 rounds.
I actually totally agree. This is my thoughts exactly. He's not in my team at the moment. He would be a pod choice. Those who went with him would actually pick him for those reasons. Easy draw. I mean, decent base, like 40 odd. Not a massive ceiling, but do you really care about that if you're going with a pod? There's no more ideal time to pick Taulagi than the start of the season. He's not going to be in your team throughout Origin. He's not going to be in your team at the end of the season. I won't be picking him in saying all that, but I can't blame those who'll give him a crack. There are just simply better options in the centre wing position. Some might say that we'd be a bit greedy if we're expecting like a constant 80, 90, 100 from someone like Taulagi, who's capable of it, but hasn't proven it before. But no, he won't be in my team start round 1, but you can't really blame anyone for giving him a crack, can you?
No, I can't. And honestly, I really want him in my side. I think you hit the nail on the head when you were like, there's just so many other options. And I think we're sport for choice with centre wing. When you're looking at that sort of 650k range, or even 600 to, even if you want to go up to Herbie price, there's just so many guys that are probably better. But I wouldn't put it past Taulagi to put it on all those guys across the first 3 weeks. So it's, if anyone's got those huge kahunas and really wants like a 1-2% pod, I love Murray Taulagi probably more than anybody. I just can't fit him in either. Like, I've toyed with the fact of getting rid of Brian Toto, upgrading him to Taulagi. I might still do it, but it just feels wrong. It's hard to do it.
That is a tough choice, mate. Honestly, that is a really tough choice. You would have big kahunas if you did do that. And you know what? Good on you if it pays off as well, because he's more than capable of backing your boast, mate. So, yeah. But no, not in my team come round 1, but good luck to those who give him a crack.
Amazing pick in draft. If you can get him late rounds in draft, which is sort of mid to late a lot of the time, especially the late rounds, it's a bargain, especially for the start. Tommy Dearden, now 637,900. It's another one of those guys that's had a bit of a career year. And it's funny when we keep having these guys have these seasons, because it's like, well, the Cowboys didn't have a great season, but all these players did. It's because their attack was still there and they had some big scores. 65 points a game. In 2024 is actually Dearden's first year where he actually hit real gun status at 61 points per game. He hadn't gone 60 plus before that. And then he went 65 into 2025. I actually said to so many people last year at the start, like, don't go near him. Like, he's only just edged over 60 for the first time in his career. He's just one of those guys that doesn't translate enough to Supercoach. But he half proved me wrong because, like, he did have a career year. He was actually really good at times last year. But I'm going to say at 637,900, I actually really don't like him. Even though it's 6, there's not many options. The reason being, his base power stats are sub 40. And anytime you're like in the 30s in your base power, it's a real issue. He goes 60 plus only 50% of the time last year. And if you look at the years before, it can even be worse some of those seasons. Basically, what it comes down to with Dearden is his 65 average and how he cements his gun status the last 2 years all hinges on a few massive scores. And if you manage to hit them, awesome. But it's very hard to pick. Having said that, his highest score was against the Dragons and his second highest was against the Titans. So he does tend to do it against sides that struggle a little bit. But 143 versus the Titans. The week before against the struggling Souths, he scored 42. And then when you have a look at it, he's got a 23 in there. So he just had the really low scores. And after the 165 versus the Dragons, he threw up 40 against Cronulla. So it's just really hard to pick how he's going to go big and when it's going to happen. And he generally doesn't do it a few times in a row. So I'd always be worried when I start him, mate, that I'm going to get like 112 out of him. And then I'm going to get a 38, a 40, and a 20. And how he started last year, let me just read these 3 scores out before I hand over to you to try and boost him up, mate, because I tell you what, it made him mud to me.
Won't be happening.
18, 28, and 21. He barely got over 60 points in the first 3 rounds combined last year.
Yeah. No, look, you've pretty much read my script, mate. Like you hit the nail on the head. I didn't even bother researching him to be honest. He's not in my team. He's not going to be picked purely for those reasons that you said. Also, what I'm a bit concerned about too is obviously the new hooker. I want to see how he gels with Marnie as well before I even think about him. But the big thing and the big reason why I just want to steer clear, I mean, people will argue that the start of the season draw could actually boost his average, but he can't string good games together. So you're not going to see any cash flow there. And you're going to risk him producing a random 20, 30 point game in the middle of a solid draw. So, I mean, there's no reason to pick him, not even for a pod move, mate. So, steer clear in my eyes.
I'll also throw out there too that I think that when you're assessing players like Dearden, it's important to assess the position. And 5'8's such a terrible position that I kind of look at it and go, geez, I'm better off spending $650,000 somewhere else. Like the points that I can get for $650K at centre wing is way better than what I can get at 6, and I'd rather spend it there. Likewise at fullback, obviously. And I think that's really important to consider for teams. Do you really want to spend in your 5'8 spot that much if you're not spending that money elsewhere where you can actually get value for your points instead of, like, I think Dearden at best case scenario, you're going to get what you pay for. And it'll be a really good start to the season if he gives you that. Having said that, look, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I could see someone going pod Dearden, and I could 100% see it working out for you. Like the first 3 weeks, he could throw up a 150 and go 50 and 68, and that's a great 3-week run. If you held on to him past that, though, I dare say you'll probably be burned. But for the first 3 weeks, you might go well. So, look, you got to go with your gut with these pods. I'm just not going to do it because I think it's a bit too volatile. I've introduced a lot of these guys, mate. We're going to go to the fallen guns now, and I'm going to let you take it away. John Bateman, 584,200, currently injured. Do we see anything from him this year? What do you think?
No, and I'm going to throw a blanket over the front row forward Cowboys and basically throw it out there that they're total garbage for SuperCoach. It doesn't mean we can't talk about them, but there's no reason to select any of them. And there's a few reasons there too, because you're looking at a team that has a potential 80-minute hooker, which means that the coach, I don't know, look at his history, mate. He's going to play around with that rotation, isn't he? He's going to be set in stone for 4 weeks and then decide that it's probably better to go something else because it's the future of the club. I just don't see that. That's definitely going to be something on the cards. the forward rotation, they're all kind of wait and see selections. So you're not going to select any of them. There is one that we'll talk about soon, but you're not going to really select any of them until you see what their output is over a 1, 2, maybe 3 game sample. You'd be crazy to select any of them just from a hit and hope scenario. So Bateman, yeah, I mean, obviously he won't be in my team ever throughout this season, and he's not the only one from that front row forward, second row forward position. What are your thoughts, mate?
I'm going to lump him in the same boat as our next topic of players, which is the mistakes and controversial takes, where I've got Ruben Cotter and Jason Taumalolo as do not touch. And they're 507,000, 456,000. As always, I think particularly Cowboys fans, but certainly just even Queensland Origin fans or just rugby league fans that like those guys will go, oh, name value alone, that team's cheap, 456, 507. And they're just such meat and potatoes options now. It is ridiculous. So I don't even think you need to go through the numbers with them. I just think there's nothing there. And I do remember, and I'll point everyone to this with Ruben Cotter, but it is similar to Jason Taumalolo, where about 3 years ago, I was on here with you and everybody was like, Ruben Cotter was a hot forward property for that year. It was like, he's going to get an extra 5 minutes a game at least. It's all he needs. He'll add some attack. He's on the up and up, blah, blah, blah. 65, 70 point type of guy, easily, ceiling for higher to be one of the best forwards. The narratives were crazy and he didn't get anywhere near it. And it's because he is a very meat and potatoes player. And he just doesn't have anything else in his game to offer for SuperCoach. It's fine if it's a really high work rate, which I guess was the argument with Taumalolo, that, when he's on, his PPM is massive. But it's just not enough. These guys just don't produce enough, whether that's minutes, output, or just being meat and potatoes, raw base and nothing else. They just don't have it. And we've seen it for a few years now. So there just isn't any world where I think that they're a good buy, or that you're going to make $100,000 unless you get like lightning in a bottle lucky that happens once every 5 years with some random player and they manage to score a double and then a single the next week after not scoring for 3 years or something. Like that's the only thing that I could see that could save someone that does it.
Oh, that's it. And I don't want the listeners to think that I didn't do my homework on their stats. It's just that when I saw their starting price and then which team they played for, I just didn't see a point in actually doing a deep dive on it. Because, if he continues, or if most of them continue down the same path as they did in previous seasons, then the coach can just step in and just mix that up a little bit as well. They've got a couple of injuries, so none of them are set in stone. Yeah, I just don't think they're worth considering whatsoever. But bar one, which we'll get to.
Bar one, and that's a real special one. I love him. I think with Ruben Cotter, and this will be the same for the Taumalolo chat and even for Bateman to a degree. I'm just going to throw a stat out there and we can just put it all to bed on that stat. He averaged 52 points a game last year. Not bad. He went 60 plus 17% of the time. Average 52 as a forward. Only went 60 plus 17% of the time. Could barely hit 60 ever, but still averaged in the 50s. That is him. You're going to get like the 45 to 55 range every bloody week. And it is so frustrating when you pay like $500K for that. Next one up on the list is our rising gun. This guy has become a little bit popular actually. Purdue, the young fella, dual centre wing, dual 5'8". So I do see the appeal because 5'8" is a bit of a wasteland. 57,400. To me, the price, I've seen it argued as decent. I find it very awkward. I think he's about $100K overpriced from when I would want to look at him. But at centre last year, he averaged basically the same. He went up 1.5 points, about 58 points a game. 13 tries as a centre in 18 games. That's a very, very good strike rate. And his base power was only 35. Now, that base power for 557,000 to me is just mud. I need way better than that. And I do like him in real life, Cowboys. So, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to hate on him as a youngster in your team. I think he's got some good potential when he's at centre. But I just, for SuperCoach, I could see him actually being worse than 57-point average. I certainly can't see him being like a 70-point average. So when I look at it, you always got to look at who's around that price point. As a centre wing, Why wouldn't I just pay almost the same price for Brian Toto? Why wouldn't I find an extra $70K to get Latrell Mitchell? There's just so many different options that I'd rather at centre wing than Purdue. And at 5'8", I just feel like that I'd rather spend up to a Munster by 50 odd K or go down. I just don't really want to spend that sort of money there. The argument though is that you've got a great draw. What if he just runs it the first 3 weeks and kills it, and that could happen.
Mate, he's in my 5/8 position at the moment. So, and it's very hard to convince me to get a Cowboy into my SuperCoach side besides Drinkwater. But yeah, I'm going to give him a crack at 5/8. Please, Peyton, just keep him at centre. I can just start by saying that because, not just his SuperCoach output, but the team just goes to mud as soon as he goes into into the halves. It's just not worth it. You got a perfectly good half there, so don't even consider it. I don't mind that base output when I've got him in the 5/8 position. I mean, other people in the 5/8 position are more than capable of producing those lower scores as well. But if you combine it with that opening draw, but also he's clearly a go-to option for the Cowboys. So his involvement in such a good draw, I'm with you with the centre wing position. I'm gonna give him a miss in the centre wings. If I'm gonna play him at all, I'm gonna give him a crack at 5/8. And I'm pretty comfortable with starting the season with him at 5/8. So yeah, you're spot on, mate. And honestly, from the other podcasts I've listened to as well, they've all got really good takes on Purdue. You don't really hear too many negative ones, so I'm glad you actually outlined the negative points on that one. But yeah, I'll give him a crack at 5/8. I think he'll be quite a popular choice as well to start the season. But why wouldn't you give him a crack when that draw is just so awesome?
It's a great draw. And look, I could easily see him working out for a period. I wouldn't want to hold him too long. And I can see teams that will go well at the start and then just hold him until that round 12. And I think that you might be in for some pain if you do that. But I could see it working out. I don't think he's a bad option. I agree with you, though. I wouldn't want to do that risk at centre wing. Even his own teammate, Murray Taulagi, you want a pod at centre wing. He's not a lot more than what Purdue is. I'd rather him. But yeah, look, I understand why you own him. I understand why teams are looking at him. It could work out. I'm erring on the side of not really enamoured by it, but I can see it happening. I guess for me, when I look at it, it's if he already got 13 tries in 18 games, we've kind of seen his runs. And I mean, admittedly, he had 2 tons. He went 121 versus Souths, 101 versus the Tigers. But, if he doesn't get that amount of tries, how many, sub 40 games are not going to get out of him? Is there a chance that he has some real low ones? And I mean, you look at the Titans matchups and he's got one 80-minute game at 18 points last year at centre.
Yeah.
And that I think that's my concern in a nutshell on being as optimistic as some of the other content creators on him, because he just has so much of that in him, and it doesn't really matter who he's against. He seems to be the type of player that can throw that up. I think I've said my piece on him. I think that he could go really well because of the draw. I just wouldn't be surprised if he can go the other way, and I'd rather someone I believe in a little bit more. But 100% he's an option, and he needs to be considered. And the thing that I'm not accounting for, he's young, which means he could improve. He could start this season out of sight better than last year, in which case he's got the world at his feet and he could be a great option. Let's move along to the Big Balls pod. The BBP for the Allstars podcast for the Cowboys, none other than Braden Burns. And I've gone from, half rubbishing Purdue to saying Braden Burns could be a pod. Look, hear me out, people, okay? I've been a Braden Burns apologist for several years since he was at Souths. He just always gets hurt. He's actually always had a really friendly SuperCoach game. 634,000, he's expensive. And that is really annoying. But his true average is actually 4 points better than what he's priced at. He had a really bad injury game. You take that out and he's actually a 69 average. Minus his injury game, he's a 51 base power. You talk about the opposite of what Purdue can do. Burns is a bit of a try scorer still, but he has such a good base power with the tackle breaks and occasional offloads that I've always just loved him as an option. He's just never gotten the opportunity, and when he's gotten the opportunity, he's just gotten hurt. That's the problem. Look, does he get a wing spot for you guys, and does he keep it for this year, mate?
I believe he will get the wing spot, and it is so difficult to say whether he'll keep it because What have we got at the moment? We've got Labart, who's meant to be right centre, who's currently suspended. And then we've got Chester, who's currently fighting fit for round one. So I think as a third option, we've got Jackson Paulo maybe coming in. I'm not sure, but
He really should not get that spot.
I really hope he doesn't.
Yeah.
But either way, Braden Burns doesn't even know who he's playing beside, to be honest. So that worries me for the opening rounds of the season too. The chemistry with the guy to the left of him, he doesn't even know who's going to be there. That worries me a lot as well. Like, how often is the ball going to get out there to him in a smooth motion where he can break the line? I'm sure they'll try, but I mean, if you got someone who's the third spot for that centre position, then yeah, that worries me a lot. Like that might hinder him by about, well, it could be the 30-point line break assist line break try that, we need him to get to actually justify his price tag. So for that reason alone, I don't really want to touch him. The base is pretty impressive. The run without injury is not. There's so many
always hurt.
And look, take a look at the price tag, take a look at the risks. He's a steer clear for me, but don't rule him out for an option later on in the season, maybe in the first half of the season when the draw is a bit more favourable. But he may make your way into some teams, probably midway through the first half. Yeah, I don't know, mate. I'm steering clear for sure for round one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was in a draft league with the other podcasters and content creators at the SuperCoach Hub organised on Thursday night last week. And I had Braden Burns penciled in for my last pick, and somebody else got him before me. So I think in draft, if you can think I was a free agent at the moment, I'd take the punt, because if he starts, let me just say, like the last 5 rounds of last year, he scored 5 times in a row in every game and had a 5-round average of 77. And that's what he can do. He can be that guy. He can be one of the top centre wings for it. Even like, I'd even say he could do it for a season, but he's just not going to stay on the park for the season. He's either going to get dropped, not picked, or he's going to end up, hurt. That's him. So it's too much risk for me. But if somebody likes the whole roulette with their trades strategy, I think that it could work for you. If he is definitely going to start on the wing, to have him for 3 weeks and then punt him. And if you did that, you could probably risk getting some good for 3 weeks and maybe a 75 odd average, and then get him out to someone else pretty quickly. And that could work out. Of course, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. But, for those that really want to be risky, but definitely for draft, I think he's a massive underrated one for draft if he's on the wing and actually playing, which is key. Look, we are going to go into the mids and cheapies now, and there's a few really good ones to talk about. Before we do, I just need to mention the great sponsor of the Allstars podcast in One World Courier. You can go to oneworldcourier.com.au today and create a free account. And when you do, it'll say, where did you hear about us? You just put NRL Allstars podcast. They'll give you a great rate card to start with to try out their services on some cheaper rates. But basically, if you or the business that you work for or the business that you own has any type of freight or shipping needs, they are the people that you should be using. If you go there to the website, sign in with your account and put in exactly what you want to send, where you want to send it, they'll tell you all the carriers that you can choose from, all the different prices. Choose whoever you want to go with, whether it's TNT, Ozpost, whoever, and they'll do it all for you from there. You just pay One World Courier's invoice and they'll get it all sent and delivered for you. So they're a great service, and they're also a great supporter of the podcast. So do get on board if you do have any need. One World Courier. Now, Andrew, the interesting ones, particularly these first couple. Reed Marnie, 418,100. It is quite cheap. It is in a position where people don't like paying money, really, because there's only a couple of top options. He is coming off a poor season, 43-point average last year, and that's off the back of only playing 61 minutes a game. So 43-point average, that's his price point at 418. It is cheap. I am in 2 minds about Reed Marnie, so I'll need you to sell me one way or another, because I do think that the positivity for Reed Marnie has gone into overdrive a bit now. I don't think that people are quite seeing the real Reed Marnie. It's like the Eminem song, with the real Reed Marnie. Please stand up. Please stand up. The real Reed Marnie is 58, 54, 55 the 3 years before. It's good, but it might only be 10 odd points better than what he's priced at. And that's enough, but it's not quite, the 20 points underpriced that I think that some people are hoping for. I don't know that we're going to see a career renaissance, although he is only 27 years old. So I guess that's on the cards. But when I looked at it, basically last year he had a 54 average, and that's right in line with basically the 3 years prior to that on his career, what he was sort of doing. And when you get a low 40s base in someone that's playing in the middle of the field as a hooker, there's a huge amount of pressure on the attack to be there. So I think that it's good. I think that he can benefit from the extra tackles that he might get with the scoring as well. So, yeah, there's an argument there could be an extra dozen odd points there. And I think he's a good option. I wouldn't begrudge anyone for going away from him, and I don't think he's a must-have. But big question for you when you tell me about whether you're on Marnie or not. Do you think Luke's on the bench? Because I think there's every chance that in a week we see Luke on the bench, and that's just you have to stay away from Marnie if that's the case.
Yeah. I don't think Marnie's minutes are an issue. So let's. He's obviously going to get 65 minutes minimum, between 65 and 80. Marnie Luke, I guess, is as good as mine whether he'll be there come round one. I reckon there'll be scenarios that Luke will actually appear as the number 14, and he might not even make the field, to be honest, in some circumstances. I think Payton should quickly realise how important Marnie's going to be to that team. When I heard that he was going to the Cowboys, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I thought this little grub is going to come in and just, destroy the culture. But I don't think that's the case. I saw him pre-season. There was something about him that I really, really liked. And the fact that I liked what I saw with Marnie says big things, because I hated the guy beforehand. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but, on the field, I hate him. He brought something to the team that I really liked, and I think he'll have high involvement there. As far as his output goes, again, it's a little bit up in the air, but the fact that his price tag's so low, that's what gets me. Like, he'll be in my team come round one. He's in my team at the moment. He's one of 5 Cowboys players that are in my team at the moment. And he's just someone that I'm going to keep in there to keep the points ticking over at a reasonable price. I agree with you that it's not really a position that you'd really want to spend big on. And he kind of fits that profile of a hooker that you don't mind starting the season with. Is he going to get you those big numbers? Probably not. He might jag a few attacking stats. That the new scoring system might actually help him out a little bit as well. But I think he'll stay on the field for a long period of time. I think he'll make the tackles to easily justify his price tag. Should we be as excited as other people are making it out to be? Probably not, and we could be proven wrong. But there's no real downside to picking him either. That's the big thing for me. I want to spend my money elsewhere. I want the hooker position to give me the points that I'm paying for, and jagging a few attacking stats along the way, which I think Marnie's just going to bring that to my team. So do we go against him? It's not a must-have, as you said, but there's no harm with getting him in your team. Low risk option, mate. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it is pretty low risk. And I mean, look, he should be able to give you 50 odd points, even if he's not going fantastic. So that's enough at that price and that position. I think he's a good option. I just also question too, I guess, it might not matter too much because his scoring's been pretty consistent, I think, on a per minute basis. I think, he'll be the same. But it did kind of come into my head, that one, I don't think he's the attacking genius that I've seen a few people sort of make out. Like because the draw's so good, he's going to get all these attack. He gets an average amount of attacking stats even when he's playing well. It's okay for his position. And I don't think that's going to go up that much. I do think that Did and Drinkwater demand a fair bit of ball. But the bigger thing with why I don't think it'll go up that much is he's now playing behind the worst pack that he's played behind in his career, I would say. And I think that he's going to really notice a difference. Like, I know that the Canterbury Bulldogs don't have phenomenal big front rowers and middles, but they've got a good pack. And he doesn't really have that. And he's not going to have guys that are running onto that ball to score tries off him really at all with those middles. And I'm not that comfortable that he's going to go that well running behind that pack. But I think that he's still going to be solid and he's going to make 100K. Just how long it actually takes. Funny side note I'll throw to you. If I did start with Reed Marnie, the trade that I would make? I'd wait until round 7 when Robson's healthy and I'd swap him for Robson.
Wow. Okay. Hey, actually, you mentioned before, it's interesting. I agree that Robson is a better hooker than Marnie. There's no question about that at all. But do I think that Robson was a better fit to the Cowboys side than what Reed Marnie could potentially be? Probably not, to be honest. Robson was such a such a good player, and I think the Roosters will benefit from him when he eventually gets on the field. But with Marnie, I think he's the guy that's going to bring what the Cowboys are missing. And you watch, I've just said that, and I've thrown him all the praise, and they'll still finish 12th or whatever, you know. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I can see him being super confident. And as you said, he's got a lot of quiet forwards around him. None of them really pack confidence as far as a big voice goes and ordering the team around the park or anything like that. That's not their job. But he's that guy that's going to be throwing orders around. But as long as it works, so if he starts barking orders from day one, and actually gets confidence from it and it works, he'll be doing that until, well, knowing Marnie, he'll just do it all throughout the season anyway. But I reckon that's going to do big things for the Cowboys. Not so much defensively, but you could see them more constantly throwing on the points.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say because I tend to agree, which, we've been agreeing a lot on the podcast, but I love Robson, and I actually think that I agree with you in a way because in a way I think he's wasted at the Cowboys. I think that Todd Payton, like when he came from the Dragons, he was a real attacking hooker, and in the lower grades, like he was such a high try scorer and be able to make line breaks and stuff. And that gradually just got curtailed. And I think under Payton's system and how Payton plays, plus the forwards that he had around him, I just don't think it suited him as much. And he's not the type of guy either that's a real vocal, passion, like hard on his sleeve type of guy. And I think that didn't fit as well. I think that'll go great at the Roosters, but Marnie's leadership is interesting because people will say, look, he's a bit of a grub and stuff, blah, blah. But you know what? Sometimes some of those softer packs need a little hooker that's a bit cheeky to get up them and to make him actually stand up and embarrass him a little bit and push him around. And I think Marnie's the perfect man to do that because he's not scared to, and he'll do it. And I actually think that it'll suit them. Now, whether it suits them long term, that's a big question mark because that type of stuff can work for maybe a season. But after that, when it grates on guys or he goes overboard a little bit, or forwards all of a sudden, find themselves getting in the first fights in their career because they have to back up Reid Marty on the field for squirting someone with water with a water bottle, whether that wears thin, we'll have to wait and see. But I agree with you. I actually think they could be good. And the best thing with him is he's got all the motivation in the world because he's just been dumped from Canterbury. And he's not old at 27, but he is at a crossroads in his career. Like if this didn't work out and he ended up getting dumped to the bench by the Cowboys, it'd almost be Super League time for him. So
yeah.
I think that he's very motivated, and I think that we'll see a better Reid Marnie than what we saw last year. All that for SuperCoach means good option. Just don't get too carried away. Don't think there's no other options. There is, but he's one of the good options that you could go for. Luki. He is the one forward, and I am enamoured with Luki, as I have been my entire life, it feels like. He's always been hurt, but he is going to start on an edge. He's 404,000. I thought that he looked good in the trial, and when it's a Cowboys side that you're really worried to own a lot of them, or a lot of them are really highly priced, at $4K, he's like that guy you can put behind Drinkwater and say, look, I do have 2 Cowboys for that great draw. At least I've got 2. And I feel like Luki is that guy because at $400K, you can't go wrong. 52 average last year. I played the 17 games, a lot of them from the bench, 50 minutes. The years before that, he was always hurt. Never really played the 80 minutes. But even if he gets that 60 minutes a game, it's still going to be enough. I do think that he'll get played for 80, but okay, great price point. His PPM has always been really good, anywhere from 1.06 down to 0.88. And for an edge back rower, that's great. He's always been someone that can find the try line. Great strike rate try scorer. And running on that edge against those edges in that first 3 weeks, I would think he has to get at least 1 try out of those 3 games. So I'd be starting him for that first 3 weeks. And that's really valuable in SuperCoach as a secondary forward mid. You can get a $400K and start for the opening 3 weeks. So I'm not going to say he's a must-have at all, but I think that he's a really, really good purchase and he's in my side.
He's in my side too, mate. And for the exact same reasons as you mentioned. Did look good preseason. I know everyone got really carried away because he scored a try in both games. And obviously that's not going to keep happening in the regular season, but he's got some good players feeding him the ball as well, like really solid players. Just they'll give him that line as well. Time it right. So is he a must-have? No, but yeah, I'm gonna take the risk on him. Surely he'll find the line a couple of times in that opening draw as well. For those who aren't considering him, it's not the be-all and end-all either. He's far from a must-have. So his base is pretty woeful, isn't it? His base output. I mean, for the price tag,
It's pretty solid. Like, he's been around that 40-odd base in limited minutes.
Oh,
so,
he has. Okay, yep.
Yep.
No, fair enough. Yeah. I mean,
The mistake I made when I was selling him to you, though, is that I said last season, but last season he actually missed the whole year. So
yeah.
I was referring to 2024. And if you go back to 2024, most of those games he started in a jersey 11. 2 of them he came off the bench. But the problem was that he only played the one game where he went 80 minutes. And that was only for 40 points, funnily enough. But the other games, it was more like a 60-minute role. So I guess that is the worry, isn't it? Andrew, they might just go, look, we'll just do the same thing, 60-minute role, you haven't played for a year. And that's going to be okay points for the money, but not great.
Yeah, not great. And I reckon that's the likely scenario is that 60-minute give or take. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty much expected to, isn't it, when you got someone coming back from injury? Preseason, I think he only played, a portion of a half or maybe a half anyway. But, yeah, I mean, low risk, right? So, especially with that draw.
Yeah, and I don't think there's many. I mean, can you think of many options around him that you'd rather go for? I mean, obviously a Calhoun is sort of 330k, so it's a cheaper investment with a more defined role, but he's more of a front rower to me, even though he could be a second row forward.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at some other guys, you know, you got Lasardi, who's a lot cheaper, but he's pretty much going to be in all sides if he's starting. And then Paxton as well. But you know what, Paxton, even at a cheaper price point, 120k less, his PPM might be worse than what Luki's is because, you know, Luki has looked better in the preseason, in my opinion, than what Paxton did. And Paxton's probably going to job share too. So I don't think there's a lot there, basically. If you're looking at the sort of 300 to 400k, I don't think there's really a lot of options to fill in your second row forward.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Yeah. No, I wouldn't say you're crazy not to have him, but gosh, it'd be a nice ride to have him anyway. He'll be. I don't know. Look, I was about to say something that I would have regretted, so I'm not going to say it. But yeah, he'll find the line a few times, like surely, and yeah, low risk. So yeah, he'll make my side come round one.
Who do you see the bench as? Because like I was trying to work out what I thought on who the Cowboys are going to have there to spell him, and you know, if Bateman's not going to be there already, round one. And I haven't seen the latest on his injury. Who's going to spell him? Like, who would he actually job share with as well?
It's actually a fair point, isn't it? Whether Kai O'Donnell kind of comes into the field as well. Who have I got on the bench here? Well, with Bateman out, you've got Lodge, O'Donnell, and possibly McKaylee, maybe Lars as well.
And Bateman could play, I'm not sure. But didn't he get moved to the middle a bit last year as well?
I don't think they really knew what his role was long term, so I think they were experimenting with him a little bit as well. I mean, I don't know. I can't really. I'd see Luki just sticking into that right edge player. I can't really see anyone taking too many of his minutes. I think Kai O'Donnell played on the left edge pre-season as well. Yeah, it'd really only be Bateman is the only one. And again, it's something that we're a little bit uncertain of when Bateman comes back into the team. So what's that going to look like? So anyone who does actually select Luki in their side really needs to be wary when Bateman comes back in as well. Yeah, it's a bit of a risk to play him.
I'll throw out there as well, like people have looked at the extended bench rule now and kind of probably overreacted a little bit. Like, I don't think I'll go on the record and say I don't think it's going to hugely affect SuperCoach. I think you're pretty much going to know the 1 to 17 players each week. It's just going to be if there's a real injury that happens. But there is injuries that do happen in the back lines. Probably 1 in 3 games you're going to hit one. And when that does happen, the first guys in the forward pack that don't go off are going to be those edge back rowers. So, you know, if that happens, you know, you have one of the forwards on the bench not used, like, say, a Kai O'Donnell, because the Cowboys end up throwing out, I don't know, Jackson Barlow as a winger that they needed to put on. You know, that could, at least one of those first 3 games, it could easily see him get 80 minutes. So there's always, you know, that little rule twinge that could actually help him out a little bit. But if he just gets a couple of weeks at 80 minutes and then goes down to 60, mate, I wouldn't care, because those first 2 weeks, you know, with that draw, doesn't matter. I'm going to finish off on a low note.
How ironic for the Cowboys. Yeah.
You know, Cohen Hess was meant to be the next big forward, and I just think the expectations were too high 10 years ago for young Cohen. But 412,600, I just have to, always on this podcast, we've got to go through all the options, mate. And at 412,000, it's cheap. And I just had to ask myself, you know, do the numbers stack up where he is a bit of an option? Because I know in prior years there's been periods where you could throw him at front row forward and make a bit of cash, and it's been quite interesting. He actually had a massive PPM resurgence last season, and the last 5 rounds he started and had a 59 average. Now you've got McLean gone, and they is there a need for him to get his minutes back? Because when you look at the numbers, first of all, he's 29 years old, so he's not like 35, like I think a lot of people think. And if you look at the numbers, as a 50-minute starter, he'll be 15 points unders, which, is pretty big at sort of 400K. So it's sort of a bit dirty to look at because he hasn't been a great player. It is role dependent, and he may very well not be a starting front row forward. But the last 5 rounds of last year, he actually showed quite a bit. His PPM for the season was 1.16. The problem was that he had a career low 36 minutes a game. So, I mean, my question to you is, what's his role to begin with? Do you think that he's going to be able to start? And if he does have that minutes upside, is it crazy to have a look at him as a front rower, even in drafts maybe?
First of all, I won't comment on draft because I still don't play it, mate. I'm still, mate, you got to get me on board one year. Hey, I really need to learn how to play that format. I heard it's a ball. Secondly, we'll probably see Hess named as starting prop tomorrow, I believe, if Griffin Neem's not fit. And I suppose when you look at that, for those who aren't aware, the only reason why he'd be named as starting prop would be if Neem's not fit. And once Neem is fit, then he's expected to come from the bench. So don't be fooled by a starting prop at that price. Unfortunately, his role's uncertain, to be honest. He'll play through the middle, obviously, but, as far as minutes, rotation, all that sort of stuff goes, he's not someone that you can pick in round 1 and confidently know what his PPM, what his output, what his minutes are going to be, unfortunately. But, and also with that coach as well, you just don't know what the rotation is going to be. But he's expected to be starting prop named tomorrow and then possibly back on the bench come round 2 or 3, depending on name. So
massive trap then.
Yeah, that's what I'm predicting anyway.
Well, I don't think anyone will be trapped because it just won't go there. But we do need to talk about all of the players. And look, Cohen deserves credit. He went on a pretty good run to end last season. I actually think he's shown sporadic form the last few years. It's been pretty valuable for the Cowboys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
A pretty average pack. But Neem, I wasn't sure when he was returning, but I've just seen that it's meant to be really early in the rounds. So no good for Cohen Hess. But that is the Cowboys. And Andrew Scanlan from the previous Points Per Minute podcast, I think all your fans will be applauding you jumping on again. So we'll try and get you on through the season. You're a very busy man with your job and everything else, so understand. But yeah, thanks for coming on and chatting your Cowboys with me.
Mate, always appreciate it. I look forward to this time every year when I can jump on and talk about one of the worst defensive teams in history for the NRL. But, they're really exciting to own. Honestly, the one thing we can say to the listeners is the Cowboys players are very exciting to own. They've got a lot of the backs have got really high ceilings because they've got a lot of points in them. So at least you're not fans of the club themselves because that's a roller coaster. So, thanks again, mate. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all. And look, at least one of the few teams in sports where they can be bad, but they're still great to own in your own fantasy sports team. So you at least get that joy out of it. But for everyone listening, make sure you do jump on iTunes, Spotify, and also YouTube and subscribe. You'll get the episodes all straight away. Also follow us on all the social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Enjoy playing around with your SuperCoach team, all the combos. It's a really exciting time of year. Can't wait to talk more footy again with everyone real soon.
You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only you